Hey, everyone, and welcome back to the Sound Horizons podcast. I am Rick. By the way, Sound Horizons podcast brought to you by TuneTrack. And I'm here today with someone you know. Look, I'm not even going to pretend like you don't know who this is. You know who this is. You love this human being. You've listened to this human being. You're a part of this human being's experience and world, and he's a part of yours. Whether you know it or not, whether you like it or not, listen. It literally is, when it comes to music, his world, and we are all just living in it. Who am I talking about? You know who I'm talking about. The man, the myth, the legend, the scholar, the author, the speaker, he's everything to everyone. Your friend and mine, please welcome Mr. Kenny Aronoff. Hi, Kenny.
What's up, buddy? How are you?
Well, you know, I'd complain, but no one would listen, and it's not going to make for a good podcast. But speaking of podcasts, this is a role reversal for you in the moment because you have a podcast. And that's what I wanted to talk about to start, because that was something you've been doing it for a while, but you're already the busiest guy on the planet doing all the things that can be done. Yeah. Explain to me this thought process where you volunteer you're more of the time you don't have to start a podcast.
Well, let me say, I didn't realize what was involved to do it the way I'm doing it. When I have a full-blown team, as far as, getting lights and getting the set the way I wanted to, and I don't like to do anything casual. So I want to do it really, really well. Then I realized to get the intros and the questions in line, it was a long 3 days of preparing for each podcast. And then the business model was to do, one a week. Well, suddenly that's like, what? I don't have time for this, So anyway, but my trajectory always is to do everything at the highest level. So I just had to figure it out. And also my decision with regard to guests were not to have like drummers. I wanted people that were more in the leadership position in the bands they're in, or very, very, very instrumental in the band. And I want to talk about, how they became successful and have stayed successful in their business.
Sure.
And so and most of the people I've either worked with, recorded with, toured with, or I know real well.
So when you have this massive list, obviously, of people you've worked with in the industry, and as you're thinking about guests, did you prioritize or already have sort of like, okay, it's got to be this person, did you already know, or did it kind of change as you were going along and getting into the conversations with the guests you had, where you're like, well, based on that, maybe I do want to have so-and-so come on, or how's that work for you, that creatively?
Well, I made my A list of guests, and not everybody's, going to be ready, is willing, or has time, or like me. I mean, I get asked to do a lot of podcasts and I can't do them all. Otherwise, I'd be just sitting all day long doing interviews. I actually got 2 more today, and I've really thinned it out because it just takes up a lot of time. But, if I reach out to somebody, let's say, like, I reached out to Sheryl Crow because I know her real well. Well, she's busy touring, and she's got a family, and she's got a new record, or, her life is full, and I can relate to that. And so, I get the reply like, oh, man, she'd love to, but not right now. And so then, I had the A list, and then I had people. It's all A list.
Of course, yeah.
But as I went down the list, and then some, other people would pop into my head, and, I mean, excuse me, I went through my discography, and it was like insane about how many people that I could reach out to, because, I've recorded on over 300 million records sold. I've been doing this for over 44 years. So I know a lot of people.
It's just a few.
Yeah.
So, okay. In this whole deluge, you've got the podcast. Obviously, you're still playing. You're still touring. You're writing books. I know you're doing motivational speaking. We're doing all these things. One of the things that enables you to do that, and you and I have talked about this in the past before, is how you take care of yourself, health. Mm-hmm. I think before we even delve into all of the amazing things that you're still currently a part of and have been,
Mm.
I would really like to get sort of your input on the importance for you personally of taking care of yourself at any age, given the amount of energy and effort you're putting into life, but also there was a point in your career where you made the decision to do that versus maybe early on in your career it wasn't on your radar as much as it was. Can you talk us through that process for you? Like what sort of turned the light on for you? Was like, man, I got to take good care of myself if I want to keep doing this.
Well, I think I've always taken good care of myself. I mean, by the time I was a sophomore in high school, I was on 3 varsity sports. I mean, I already was like massive, training with, in soccer, lacrosse, and I was a downhill skier. I grew up in the East Coast. So I already was, it was just normal for me to take orders and to work out and to, and it's in my DNA. I have a really strong, athletic constitution. But when I got into rock, even my freshman year at college, I was playing lacrosse for second on the number 9 lacrosse team in the United States at University of Massachusetts. And then when I transferred to Indiana University, I was playing on the club soccer team, which they eventually became national champions. But eventually, there was a conflict between when I had to be active in sports in college and my music career, and going to school at Indiana University, which was the number 1 school of music in the country, if not the world at the time in classical music. Every second was devoted to, you know, studying and, because at that school, you had music history, music literature, sight singing, music theory. You had large ensemble, small ensemble. You had lessons, which was, man, you practiced your butt off for that. You had all the other normal courses that people take at college. I had to do 2 operas a year.
Wow.
I had conducting, piano, sight singing. That's why it's number 1. And this was not a hand-holding, coddling type of school. This was like, if you do nothing, you get thrown out.
Wow.
That's the way it is. This is not like, well, I showed up. This is not, if you get an F, you deserve an F. If you want an A, work harder. It's that simple. And that's always been my mentality. There are no excuses. I mean, there may be. You break your leg, that's I suppose an excuse, but there's always my mentality, and I may have gotten that from in sports, is like, all right, it's not like, oh, I can't do this. It's like, when will I do this?
Mm.
Think about this. I mean, an NFL running back, these guys don't always get touchdowns, but they try. That's their trajectory. Sometimes they do, sometimes 5 yards, 2 yards, -2, fumble, break their leg, and they're out for the season. All they're thinking about is getting back on the field because they love football. That is their purpose in life, their deepest desire, their bliss. That's what they figured out at a very young age. Well, I'm like a running back in football. And some of that is in my DNA, and then some of it is like from that early childhood of working with coaches that were not hand-holding. I mean, they were not
Yeah.
coddling. You don't show up and get a trophy, you earn it. And so I'm my own coach now. So let's fast forward. I'm in the John Mellencamp band, and I started, I mean, of course, we young kid, you're partying, but my career was always more important than, I had too much to drink one night and I had a hangover the next day. I just stopped drinking. It's just
Yeah.
that simple. The career was more important than the party. Partying's fun, and in rock and roll, it's there,
Yeah.
but the career was always more important. So that was my, my barometer. It kept me in check. And if I didn't perform at the level I wanted to, then I would make adjustments. Now, in 1994, I guess maybe I was I always worked out and I always trained. Always did. I always worked out, always trained, went to a gym. In 1994, I got a trainer for the first time, and that opened up the door where I really had somebody who really analyzed, and we, between cardio and lifting weights and diet and supplements, then it opened up the whole thing to another level. And then eventually, you get to a certain age, you get physicals every year, you do blood work. Blood work tells this whole story. If you want to know where your health is at, if you do blood work, it doesn't lie. It tells you where you need to make the adjustments. So I started that a long time ago. And so I would make those adjustments. And it became a lifestyle for me. So, keeping everything in check. And it helps me perform at the level I do at my age. And I'm always trying to learn and be healthy. I have 8 steps to a healthy life. I call it a healthy life is a wealthy life, or a wealthy life is a healthy life.
Nice. Well, so you talk about this moment where you get a trainer and you start putting all the pieces of the puzzle sort of together
Mhm.
at one trajectory. You probably had them all, you probably had some of the diet and some of the routine, but the trainer obviously helps you focus that in. Did you notice at that point in time, do you remember noticing a difference in your playing as a result of that? Or was it just more mental that, easier to kind of navigate longer tours, play? Was there anything that you could kind of trace back to an instant performance boost as a result of combining all those things at that time?
Yeah, I mean, I just felt better. I mean, I never felt really bad. I
Sure.
always was in good shape because I started at a young age. In other words, when I left playing varsity sports, I always worked out. I always ran. I always
Well,
did
you hit
cardio.
hard. You hit really hard, and that
Yeah.
takes a toll on your body. That's why I'm asking. So, I
Well, with regard to that, I learned new techniques where when you study, uh, I guess I got a pencil. When you study, and you study marimba, it's all wrist technique because you're trying to get this yarn mallet off of the wooden bar. It won't bounce. So you learn wrist technique. When you do timpani, you use finger technique once again to get the stick off the drum to get tone. Now on drum set or on a snare drum, the single stroke goes wrist, but the double stroke, you throw the stick down, let the fingers get out of the way so the stick bounces up, and then you pull the stick back down. So I had wrist technique and finger technique. Now, as I started getting more and more heavy into being the heavy hitter I am, I started taking that technique and moving it into my, I guess you call it the molar technique, move it into my
sure.
wrist, upper arm, and then eventually I realized it was like martial arts, where that's why you always see me moving when I'm playing, and that's just the way I do it. I mean, there are brilliant drummers that don't move like a Dennis Chambers, but my technique is more like I'm using my body like a tennis player. They're always moving when they're waiting for the serve. They're moving already, and they spend half the time going to the ball, pulling their arm back, half the time following through to hit the ball. They're always in motion. So that's kind of the way I play. And what happened is the harder I learned how to hit, the more, instead of playing from here, you're trained to hold the stick with the thumb and first finger, forefinger. But and then you support with these fingers, the harder you hit, and I use a die cast tube, and I hit the rim every time, unless it's a certain song where I want just the center. But the point is, I moved from these fingers because when you grip these fingers, you're getting tension here, and that's where you get carpal tunnel.
Mm.
So what I did is I moved to back here. So I fight from the back fingers. And if you look carefully, when I hit the snare drum, I open up my fingers to avoid, it was a natural thing. So I'm playing like this, when I come down and my fingers are open, to when I hit the hoop, I'm not getting that shock into my arm. And I suppose that's an athletic approach to being
Sure.
aware of
Yeah.
your body and always trying to improve your technique. But I mean, when I started to build my body up lifting weights, um, my muscle mass got up, and I've always still been lean and mean, and I never wanted to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I definitely in 96 to 98, I was bigger than I am. If you look at videos with me with Melissa Etheridge, or even the Smashing Pumpkins, when I went on tour with them in 98, you could see that I had, more muscle mass, but always, I always played in flow, and the power was always there, but with a little more muscle mass, I suppose I had more reserves. My diet was curtailed because when you work out, you have to eat lean and mean proteins with the right carbs and the right amount of vegetables. So the whole engine and drink, a certain amount of water a day. The whole system is working better. Um, yeah, I mean, it's definitely helps. You have more reserve, that's for sure. I mean, Melissa Etheridge, we do like a 2-hour sound check and a 3-hour show,
Jeez.
and at full tilt. And with Fogerty, same thing, sometimes a 4-hour sound check. And he'd be saying, "Oh, are you playing at full volume?" I said, maybe 85%. He said, "I want you to play full volume, full power
Wow.
in sound check." Yeah.
Okay, so we were talking before the podcast started, and I was talking about your plaques that you have behind you. So you know how many? I want it on record. I want you to say how many you have, so people can drop their
Mm,
jaws at home. So go
yeah.
ahead. How many? How many?
I have in my possession 1,300 gold, platinum, diamond records. Diamond in the USA is 10,000, no, 10 million
10 million.
record,
Yeah.
10 million. Um, and there's a lot I don't have because they stopped giving them out. Like there's one I really wish I had, which I'm gonna may go after, is just I recorded for 2 weeks with the Rolling Stones on Bridges of Babylon playing percussion. I'd love to have that in my collection. But yeah, I mean I've got a huge amount of these things. And it's kind of cool. The only place I have them is in my office here and in my studio, which it was too early for me to go there and turn the lights on.
Yeah,
So
of
I'm doing it
course.
here. But yeah, I mean it's kind of cool because
Kinda. What are you, nuts? That's gotta be.
nobody's
Have you
yeah,
checked to see if that's a world record for any session musician?
I have no idea.
It's
I mean,
gotta
I'm,
be,
I'm
right?
on 300 million records sold, but that's because 3 of them went to 40 million. 2 Celine Dion records are 40 million that I'm on. Meatloaf, Bad Out of Hell 2, with I'll Do Anything for Love, but I Won't Do That, was like 40 million. I think Ricky Martin with Livin' La Vida Loca. I didn't play on Livin' La Vida Loca, but I played on Shake Your Bon Bon and all these other ones. That could be 18 to 20 million. I mean, people don't sell that. I mean, except to Taylor Swift. They just, the people don't buy records. I mean, that was a huge transition I saw when I was making, right about when I was making Michelle Branch's record. I realized, wow, things are changing because I was overdubbing drums to finish tracks.
Mm.
I remember walking in that song Everywhere, which was a big hit
Yeah.
on her first record, and I went, wow, I went in and listened to the song. I'm about to write the chart. I went to my buddy John, the producer, John Shanks. I went, wow, this sounds completely finished. He says, it is. You're the last component. I went, wow, okay. So the drum room that we're in at Sunset Sound, I mean, that room is $2,500 a day. And let's say you spend a month in there.
Yeah.
Now, what John would do is they'd build these tracks up in his studio, his own home studio, or he was renting a studio at Henson. Um, you could build up all the tracks there and not have to rent that big room. And then when you get all the tracks done, you go in and do the drums. And I remember doing 13 songs with him. Check this out, because I read and write music very
Oh,
at a
quickly.
very high
It's
level.
it's
You saw it.
frightening. It's
You saw it,
frightening.
yeah.
I
So
watched you do it. It's frightening.
yeah, I can write every note out. And so I remember being on tour with Michelle Branch in Philadelphia, got on a plane, 7:30 from Philly, landed in LA by 12 or 12:30. I was in Henson Studio A, recorded 13 tracks, 13 songs, and then took the red eye back to New York to do a TV show with Michelle Branch. Now, the 13 tracks were 8 Alanis Morissette songs, 2 Anastasia songs, a Melissa Etheridge song, a song that John had written with John Resnick from Goo Goo Dolls, and another song that was maybe going to be for Gwen Stefani or something that John wanted me to play drums on. He was demoing up. But everything was written out before it got there, and I just went bam, 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 bam.
So then, do you have is it a personal, because you are an incredibly competitive and a very disciplined guy, which I've always known about you. But so to you, is it a mark is it a Kenny Aronoff? Has to be that if you can nail it in one take, you nail it in one take. Is that in the back of your mind? Like there's no second chances. This is it. This is the take, whether I know it or not, this is happening.
Well, I'm always assuming that this could be the only take you get, because with Mellencamp, oh my God, if you got a take and you click your sticks and you like the vibe of the take, that's it. That's what you're living with. I'm like, come on, let me do it again. Nope, nope, nope. I love it that you clicked your sticks. So what I do, my process now, because I have my own studio, Uncommon Studios LA.
Yep.
Because when I saw the writing on the wall, when I saw that budgets were going down, I had drums in New York, Nashville, LA, Indiana, where I live, Japan, and Germany. I got everything out of New York, Nashville, and Indiana. I got a semi, moved everything to LA and moved to LA and started my studio, Uncommon Studios. And because I knew that people weren't going to be able to afford to fly me around anymore, or not as much. And I thought this makes sense. And so what I do today is, if somebody just sent me a file last night, they want me to do a song, I ask for a Pro Tools session, or ask for a WAV files, or MP3s, and I want the song with the demo drums, and I write every note out because I know that's what they've been listening to. So my first take, I give them 2 takes. The first take will be very accurate to the demo, and then the second take is my musical vision based on that demo drums, what maybe I could do to make it cooler, or another alternative. But what I do, let's say I'm going to record 6 songs in one day, which is normal. The day before, or the night before, I'll run through all those songs until I feel like I got this, because the next day I can get it in one take and then do another version, or maybe 3 times, because the next day I'm playing and performing now. It's not like, it's like I'm learning it. I am now performing. And this took me about 25 years because I wasn't fully aware, but when I'm reading, I've learned how to make it sound like I'm not reading.
Sure.
It's got to sound like you're playing live. So I've learned how to play. I step out of myself and listen and observe as if I'm in the audience, or listening to the music through speakers. Does that drummer sound like he's reading? Does he care? Is there any passion? I mean, I've seen drummers play live and they're playing perfect. Everything's amazing, but I'm not feeling anything.
Yeah.
It's all about feeling. And so anyway, that's my process now. But I always, because of the Mellencamp days, always thought, man, this could be the only take you get. So I'm always ready. When that red light goes on, it's like the Olympics.
Well, one of the other things that's very unique about you as not only a person, but as a professional musician who's had the career you've had, is for the most part, you are still with many of the same companies gear wise that you've been with your entire career. And I was going to ask, given again how disciplined you are, do you find that because you've really honed in your kit, you've honed in your sound, that these all help you just get to that finish line of, hey, I already know what my drums sound like, where they're at. They're these sizes, they sit in these places. So since you don't really have to think about that very much, does that aid in that getting that first take as well, or is that a part of it at all?
Oh yeah, of course. I know, and of course, having your own studio, my drums are always set up.
Sure.
Right now, I have the Tama Babinga drums. I like the aggressiveness. If I don't use them, I'll use the maple shells. And if if I want something warmer, a little bit more down, I'll go to the walnut set. And it's interesting because I was using and I still use a 26-inch by 14 1955 Ludwig kick drum, but I just as my main bass drum. It doesn't ring too much. It's dead, but it's big and low, goes under the bass. But I just changed some mics, experimented with mics. I use ribbon mics, overhead, a stereo Royer SF-24 in the center of the kit. Because when you do an overhead, there's always a competition between toms and cymbals. And then somebody sent me some mics, and I put them at the other position, which is to the left and right. And they're Roswell mics, and they're like a C12 here, and then I changed the room mics with Roswell, and all of a sudden the whole kit changed, which makes sense. I'm not using ribbon mics, which are usually warmer. I had two Warrior, usually I use 121s out there, and all of a sudden I put these new mics up in those four positions, two overheads, two room mics, and all of a sudden the whole kit changed in depth and perception. I put the Babinga 24-inch kick drum up. I never heard it sound so powerful and so punchy and ambient. So that was cool because now the mics are a big factor. Of course they are, but
Yeah.
I'd been using the same mics for a while, and when I tried other mics, it didn't improve it. But all of a sudden, these mics did. It gave me a different sound, a different tool. So, with regard to gear, yeah, man, you got to know your gear. Cymbals, same thing. Zildjian, I've been with. Evans drum heads. Now that was out of the big companies. I did switch from Remo to Evans. Now Remo's incredible head company. It's just that what happened was a buddy of mine who worked for Evans kept trying to get me to try this new heads. Now, Evans had come to me for years, but the Mylar was too soft for me and I would dent it. So the drums would go out of tune very quickly. And I kept saying to him, you know, this is just, these heads are cool once you get them on, but it's just, I think the Mylar isn't working with me. They got different Mylar. They retooled or made different machines to make their heads. Finally, this guy flies from New York and he puts heads on a bunch of my drums just to try them out. I was doing it to help him. So I went to a John Fogerty rehearsal and I left those heads on. And the engineer came up to me, the live engineer, said, "Man, what's changed with your drums?" I went, "Oh man, I'm sorry. I was experimenting." He says, "No, they sound better. And then your drums sound better." And then the Tama guys were out there, they were delivering me some stuff. Said, "Man, I never heard those dark classic maple drums sound so good. What did you do? What are you doing?" And it was the heads. New Mylar. And then on the snare drum, I used a heavyweight. Eventually, I got it down to a science heavyweight on top, Hazy 300 on the bottom, die-cast soup on the top, triple flange on the bottom, certain snare pure sound, wait, are they? No, they're steel snares, 24 or 20 flat edges, everything affects the sound of the drum. And if I tell everybody to follow that protocol, their snare drum every single time, like, oh my God, my drum has never sounded so good. So those details, every single thing I just mentioned is huge. Then I tried these heads in my kit in the studio. And I got the same response. So I said to the engineers, "What is it that you like about these heads?" The live guy said, especially on the snare, that I can take your drum, I can EQ it in different places to get away from the guitars or get its own voice. And that drum has more frequency range now with these heads. So I after a year or two, I finally had to make the decision. And it was hard because my relationship with Remo was great, but I had to make the decision because it made my drum sound better, at least my setup. But I still think Remo's great drum company. So I've stayed very loyal to all my companies. I say the latest addition was I did move from vinyl to LP. It just was a number of things, but I couldn't be happier. The LP
Well, but I mean, you've mentioned two names in it, like you said, in a 44-year career, making two changes is unheard of, as you know. I mean, generally, guys at your caliber and your level have offers thrown at them all the time, or the grass is always greener, or like you said. So I think it speaks volumes of you, just from a human standpoint. Like you said, your relationships are clearly incredibly important to you, which is another great segue. Because there's this moment in my mind that I've wanted to ask you about. So. And I apologize to the watching audience. I have an advantage because Kenny and I have talked at length about some of these things in the past, but I know when you were in Mellencamp's band that band was like we would say that was a real band. That was a group of guys that lived together, worked together, Mellencamp included. It was a hard-working, real band.
Yeah.
So you're in that band and you have obviously you develop all those relationships and you get to know the
Yeah.
way the players interact with one another. And then there comes a point where you're going to start to go do studio work and you're just kind of coming in cold and having to try and, like you had mentioned earlier, create the illusion that all the guys in this room aren't reading a chart and have been playing together for years. Do you remember what the first experience was where you had to do that and how you felt having to do that?
I think the first experience was well, my sound in the '80s became real big. I was with Mellencamp. They mixed the drums so loud in the mix that I became this new sound in the '80s. And Jack and Diane, Hurt So Good on the American Fool record. I mean, especially Jack and Diane featured drums, and I hadn't defined my sound completely yet, but it was still big. Then the Harm record in '83, '84, Pink Houses, the Authority song Crumblin Down. Then I moved to a Ludwig Superphonic 400, the brass 1962 snare drum, and with that sound became my sound, which I eventually duplicated and Tama as my signature snare. I sent it to Japan and they made me my version of that kind of drum, but even better. And to the extent where I'd walk into sessions and bring my Tama snares. I had a 5x14 and then a 6.5x14. And I'd bring the old Ludwigs and they would always pick the new ones because they were just made better. And then so I get called, I think I know what the first record was. I did a Brian Setzer's first solo record outside of Stray Cats.
Okay.
A Knife Feels Like Justice. And Tommy, it's basically his first last name, he played with Billy Joel forever. Guitar player from Billy Joel's band. He was the guitar player, Brian Setzer, and then Kenny Aronoff's son, a bass player, played with Joan Jett forever, and New York Cat. He was the bass player, and but see, I was such a band guy at that point, and these guys were band guys. So we weren't really session players. We were band guys making a record. Then the next big record I did might have been a couple years. That was '85 and '87. I think was Belinda Carlisle's first solo record. And there was a number one hit off of that, Heaven on Earth. That was my first number one hit outside of Mellencamp, her first number one hit out of the Go-Go's. And that was, I went, oh my God, I'm on a number one hit again. And I love this. And that was more session people. It was, John Pierce on bass, who now plays with Toto. And he was a session player. He played with Huey Lewis in the News for a while, but we were session guys. Eventually I became a big session guy. And then Tim Pierce,
Yeah.
they are brothers. He became a humongous session player. We were all kind of coming into it at the same time. And these were session guys. And it was like multiple takes. But I was still band attitude where every take had to be as if we were on stage. And I was starting to see how I was always trying to create that live, raw thing on these records. And sometimes producers would, you could say it was too much, and I had to find that space for them. Now, in '88, after we'd become, Mellencamp, now we were flying around in private jets, selling out 2 nights at the Forum where I just saw Sammy Hagar, the best of both worlds, and I'm backstage, I'm hanging with them, and there's a picture of Mellencamp, the days we were there. 2 nights sold out at the Forum, 360 degrees. In Chicago, we do 2 nights at the Rosemont, which is a humongous venue. 2 nights at Madison Square Garden. We were huge. And John quit. He suddenly just quit. Last show at Summerfest in Milwaukee, he's quit. He was burnt out. I didn't know that. And I went, oh my God. If he doesn't play, I don't play. Basically, we had gone straight, nonstop for 8 years, 4 albums. And then went, oh my God. And next day I woke up and went, all right, I can't work with one boss anymore. I've worked with one boss for 8 years. Now I'm going to work with all the other ones. So I started coming out to LA and aggressively went after being a session player. And a year later, I get a call from, and I was doing some records here and there. But a year later, I get a call from Don Was to do Bob Dylan, but then Bob Dylan decided to postpone. I did Iggy Pop, and Bob Dylan, and Bob Seger, then Elton John. And then I was off to the races. Then I went after Nashville, and then in New York, and I had drums everywhere. And that's where I learned to become a session player. And that's where I started to understand, playing live, being a session player, being a live session player, all those dynamics of reading, making it sound live. And, the main thing is to have that live energy, in my opinion, even when you're in the studio, because that's what people feel. They relate to feelings, emotions, and energy.
Mm. So quick fact for everybody watching at home. I know you've probably heard the Belinda Carlisle song, Heaven on Earth, but I encourage you to go listen to it again because there is the most kick-ass triplet fill coming out of the bridge of that song that Kenny does, that if you're not listening and you're caught up in the pop elements of it, you're like, you don't even realize it's there. Go listen and you'll be like, oh, that's right. There's a real drummer on the track. It's fantastic. So, okay. We know you made the transition. You've played for everybody. So the question becomes then, is there anyone you haven't had the opportunity to work with yet that you wish you could have or still might?
Oh my God, yeah. Well,
that'd be hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Well, I always wanted to have a power trio with Sting on bass and singing and Jeff Beck playing guitar and me on drums.
I'd go see that band. I'd go see that band.
I thought that would be cool. There's so many, I'm a big fan of Josh Homme from Queens of the Stone Age. That'd be a cool band. Foo Fighters would have been, I played with Dave Grohl and almost all those guys, but that's a cool band. Of course, The Who.
Sure.
All
the big ones, of course.
All the big ones.
But you played with Ringo. You're one of those rare drummers that's played with everybody's, the first drummer as far as most people are concerned.
Yeah.
Was that a surreal experience for you? Was it kind of like a full circle moment?
Oh, totally. The first time I played, well, I'd met him a couple times. I'd be in one studio, would be the next. I think the first time I met him, I might have been doing a Lyle Lovett album, and we were at Conway, and there's Ringo, and all I could do is I picked him up and hugged him. And of course, if anybody's been hugged by me, I usually crush him. And Ringo just went, ah! And I just got so excited. I just couldn't help myself. And then I did this thing where we honored him. It was what Don Was, and we honored him. I think it was the David Lynch Foundation, and I got to play double drums with him on 4 songs. And oh my God, it is unbelievable how his feel and his sound, it's the Beatles. It sounds like he transformed what we were all doing into sounding kind of like the Beatles. It's just, he's got a very unique feel and swing and sound. And so that was that. And then 2 weeks later, I did the Grammys with him where he sang Photograph and I was the drummer. And then the next night, we did the tribute honoring the Beatles for the Ed Sullivan Show called The Beatles, The Night That Changed America on CBS. And I got to play maybe 3 or 4 songs. One song we played double drums, he sang, which was Boy. He sang Boy. And then the other was Yellow Submarine and another song. So it might have been 3 songs. I mean, I was flipping out. And I got to play with Paul McCartney, and I got to play with Dave Grohl on this tribute, Jeff Lynne from ELO, Joe Walsh from the Eagles, Alicia Keys, John Legend, duet, Keith Urban, and John Mayer together, Brad Paisley, Pharrell, and a bunch of other people. When I got done with my segment, there was only 30 minutes left in the show, and I wanted to watch it from the audience perspective. I went out into the audience, and wow, there are these elite seats. It's like Tom Hanks' wife, Ringo Starr's wife, Paul McCartney's girlfriend, John Lennon and George Harrison's widows, and these famous actors, Johnny
Wow.
Depp, Tom Cruise, and Sean Penn, and they're all acknowledging me. But Ringo is going, "Bravo, Kenny, great job." Now I met him, but I never had a chance to tell him how much he meant to me. It was a very humbling moment. And everyone was looking at me, and I know Tom Hanks, so I did that thing you do, that title cut, and we're talking, then I get down on one knee in front of Ringo, trying to think of what I'm going to say, and he goes, Kenny, it's okay, I'm already married.
Huh.
It was so
Nice.
Ringo's song. But then I said, no, you're the reason why I play drums. You're the reason why I play rock and roll. You and the Beatles set me on a course at age 10. After I saw the Ed Sullivan Show, you set me on a course to become who I am. You helped me realize my purpose in life, and I want to thank you.
Man.
That was the moment. And as I walked away, I mean, this is all coming out of me naturally.
Sure.
As I walked away, I suddenly went, you know what? In order to be great at something, really great in any field, business, music, sports, whatever, you gotta love what you do. And I'll explain why. It's gotta come from here, not up here. Because when you love what you do, I mean, really love it, you're gonna be unstoppable, undeniable, and completely authentic. And the example is I still wake up every morning and get excited about all these projects I'm doing. But at night, 2 in the morning, I don't want to turn the light off because I'm still, I could just do one more thing. I can't wait. Oh, I got to do one. The only reason why I go to bed, because number 8 on my 8 steps to a healthy life is a wealthy life, is sleep. You need 7 to 8 hours of sleep to repair the brain and the body. Of course, I wake up 5 times a night, but the point is, I make myself go to sleep. See, when you love what you do, and it's your deepest desires, your passion, your bliss, your truth, whatever you want to call it, your purpose in life, when you're living your life like that, I mean, you just can't stop. You just love it. You want to do it. And the ripple effect of your loving and your joy for what you do affects everybody around you. That's why people may hire me. It's not just I play good. Let's get Kenny in the room. He's fun. He motivates the room. He keeps the session going. And I mean, you're doing the right thing when you follow your heart. And it's not just here, it's here. You can't,
Well, talking about the here and here thing, let me ask you, and this is just an observation. So, in this day and age, as I'm sure you're aware, YouTube incredibly popular, and the amount of drumming education and information that everyone has access to on YouTube for free, it makes me angry because I can remember being a kid having to scramble to try and, when Hudson first started making like if you could find one, they were $90. No one rented them. You had to, and you didn't even know if anything on there was going to be useful or not. But now you can just go to YouTube and you see a display of chops, technique, and drumming ability, I think unlike anything we've ever seen generationally. Do you ever look at it and think to yourself, I mean, obviously it's always amazing. Anyone that can do that is always amazing, but
yeah.
sometimes it seems like something's missing, right? Sometimes it seems like it's all skill and you kind of wonder if it's serving the purpose of just being the skill or if it's musical. Do you ever look at it and think, wow, can you be too good? Is there any component where maybe, like you said, you're too much up here and not enough in here, and it kind of gets the signals might get crossed and it may not be as useful? Or do you just kind of look at it and be like, wow, what an amazing time we live in?
Both. I mean, I look at it and go like, oh my God, I could never do that.
Yeah.
I'll never be able to do that. I'm not made that way. So I value that. On the other hand, I look at the drummer's role is to pick the right beat, keep time, make it feel good. That's like a cake. And the icing is creative ideas. And you don't want the icing to disrupt the cake or the cake falls apart. You need cake to put icing on. Icing is creative stuff. It's all these fills and all this stuff. But ultimately, if you're playing in a band, you're playing music. Unless the music is all designed around you, even Neil Peart, where those drum parts are extraordinary, or even like Mike Portnoy with, playing with Dream Theater, but there's still have to play a beat and time and play beat, time, and groove. And then all the other stuff, they may have more technical, creative ideas added to it because that's designed in the music.
Sure.
But you got to think about it as a team, and everybody has to play great. A Super Bowl. Look at teams win Super Bowls, World Series, Stanley Cups, NBA titles, not individuals. You want to be the MVP on your team for the team, but it's not good enough. The ultimate Super Bowl team, like a Patrick Mahomes with Andy Reid as the coach, or Bill Belichick, and Tom Brady with the Patriots. These guys were incredible together, but what was really incredible was that everybody on the team was great, and these people unified everybody and brought them together and made them feel like we as a team can win this Super Bowl. So if I play great, that's not good enough. What my trajectory has always been, especially when I was doing sessions, when you could get on the radio and make hits, my trajectory always was, and it took me a while to figure it out, was, oh my God, it's not about me, it's about we. It's about the song, the artist. How do I get that song on the radio to be a #1 hit single? Well, when, you're practicing 8 hours a day like I did in music school, it's all about you. But to be Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes, the ultimate, or LeBron, it's about the team. What can I do to get the basket? How do I win the game? Okay, I got to pass. You got to play good. You're not doing your job. Bass player's not doing the job. That guy's going to make it so that the song doesn't get on the record, that'll then get on the radio. So I might go up to the bass player and say, hey man, what's your part, man? We should like lock up a little better, motivate, co-elevate the other players so that we as a team elevate and do a great job. Now so if you're a highly technical drummer that's doing all this stuff, that's fine. But if you're playing in a band, you might want to consider it ain't about you, it's about what are we trying to do here? So both have value, massive value.
Sure.
It just is that if you're just playing by yourself, you are the band. You're everything. You can do whatever you want because you're not playing with anybody. You can do whatever you want. And it's interesting. When I get off of this podcast with you, I'm going to do a little bit later a promoting the UK Drum Festival in Liverpool that I'm doing later this year. And I asked who's some of the drummers. It's interesting. Some of the drummers are really big on YouTube, but they don't play in bands that we know. And some of them, I'd never heard of, but they're massive on the social media platform, which is fine. And they're there because a lot of the audience is not maybe listening to the radio, that they're more focused on that whole platform. They're now involved with the YouTube. Who's on YouTube? Who's on Instagram? Who's on, X and whatever. And so the audience and the performer are now locked up, just like it was a listener, like me listening to the radio or looking at Rolling Stone. It's the same thing, but it's a different environment. So to answer your question, so I'm going to come out, and the first song it's a medley, will be a song I recorded with Tony Iommi from Black Sabbath and Glenn Hughes from Deep Purple. It's just like guitar show. Boom, crash, boom, crash, boom, crash, boom, crack, crack, boom, ba, boom. It's all beat, time, and groove. There isn't one fancy thing I'm doing, but it's just like Back in Black in AC/DC. Who can argue that? Or Kashmir with John Bonham. You know what I mean? It's just the right part. Then I'll break into something that nobody's heard of. It's in 7 and bizarre time signatures. And that will be my way of saying, okay, I'm doing what I do. That's it. And the last song I play on the whole show is a song I recorded with the Buddy Rich Big Band. We're talking wicked fast, straight no chaser. You probably have heard it.
Yeah.
Wicked
Yeah.
fast, and you're playing with a big band, and I have a solo at the end, but until then, I am part of the band. We're all doing the same thing. Beat, time, groove, play our parts as a unit. So, yeah, my thing is completely different from them, but my job is to own what I do. And there's only one Kenny Aronoff. There's only one of them, and we should all be doing at the highest level what we as individuals do, and that audience will get to see, wow, that's a nice piece of chocolate. That's a nice piece of chocolate. That's a nice piece of chocolate. It's all chocolate. It's all good.
So you talk about something that's really interesting. Again, as we were talking before, you started this session journey at a time, the greatest time in recorded music history, right? So lots of records are being made, lots of rock stars, artists, the most successful time for the industry as a whole. You've been there through the whole thing. But from a session player standpoint, you were also part of a group of people that during that point in time you were playing with. Like your contemporaries are like Jeff Porcaro and Steve Gadd and Jim Keltner and Kurt Biscayne and all these other cats. So while you guys, and there's only so much music that can be made every day, even though there's a lot back then, there's still only so much. Did you find that were you guys in a polite competitive rivalry for gigs, or was everyone just like you said, just doing their own thing, going on their own calls and supporting one another?
Well, I can only speak for myself. It was kind of cool to be walking into it. I got a great story about Jeff Porcaro that the drum doctor told me recently when I was in a session. Uh, I was like, the new guy coming into town in LA, and there's Jeff Porcaro in the back, and I wanted to meet him because I remember I was just reading Modern Drummer, and I was in, the Mellencamp band living in Indiana, and I remember Jeff saying, "Wow, I'm so busy, I don't even have time to practice." Well, all I had was time to practice because I was just in the Mellencamp band. And finally, this was the beginning. Boy, do I relate to that now. Oh my God. So this guy said, "Do you remember?" The drum doctor said, "Do you remember you were back there and you asked Jeff, how do you make it into the session world in LA?" Now, typically, if you ask another drummer that, they get very, hey, don't encroach on my work, because we all want to do everything. Everything. I want to do everything. Why are you doing that? I wanted to do that. I want to play with you too. I want to play with Rod Stewart. I want to. And I remember a friend of mine was saying to me back then, like, "Hey, man, there's enough work for everybody." But, you get real competitive. "No, I want the Sting thing. No, I want the—" I remember, I won't mention names, when I got the Chicken Foot thing, a real famous session drummer and band drummer went, "God, how did you get that gig?"
Mm.
That kind of thing. But Jeff Porcaro went, "Hey, man, I'll help you, man. Here's my number. When you come to town, I'll hook you up. I want to help you get—" Yeah, there's plenty of work for all of us. That was badass.
Mm.
He offered, and I forgot he'd done that, and this guy reminded me. Yeah, he was offering to help you. And then there were other times, I remember one drummer, I won't mention name, said, "Oh, no." I was walked into the studio like, "God damn, I'm gonna buy you a one a ticket, a one-way ticket back home." Yeah, he was like making fun. "You're everywhere. You're always on every record." So it was kind of funny.
That's
But
amazing.
he said,
Did you again, you've been hyper focused and determined since you started. So did you take all that in stride, or did you ever stop to think, did it ever affect you in any sort of way? Like, did, one of the questions I've been asking everybody on the podcast, and it can be at any point in time in your career, is given your level of success, did you ever, or do you still ever deal with what we call imposter syndrome, where you're like, what if they figure out I'm not the right guy, or what if they figure out I'm not good enough, or where you sort of have your own self-doubt? It doesn't sound like self-doubt has ever been a part of your life ever.
well, I used to be a little bit insecure if I, because I have a phrase that goes like this: "I'll never be as great as I want to be, but I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be as great as I can be."
Sure.
And that's that running back. The running backs don't get touchdowns every time. And as soon as they get a touchdown, they want to get the ball again to show that they can do it again. That's me. I'm never 100% satisfied, but I don't let it get me down. I learned, oh, do never let the negative energy run into your head. I don't say the word mistake or failure anymore, because it just triggers old times when you were a little kid, you know, when you were young, when your dad said, or your mom said, or your teacher said, or your coach said, or whoever your friend said, you know, you suck, you messed up, you know, and then that will never go away because you learned it as a child. I saw a buddy of mine who wrote 7 #1 bestsellers in New York Times, and I saw him crumble when he thought, wow, I made some big mistakes and failures. We were in a discussion. I slugged him in the arm. I hardly knew him. I said, no, you didn't. Man, those were just events that helped you get where you are now. So, yeah, I'm very, very competitive, and you know, most of the time I will say I could do that better. But I also understand the value. Do not get down on yourself because there's an ego in that. I remember my teacher in college teaching me this, and I couldn't figure out what he meant. You know, I started putting myself down and go, you know, that's just as much an egotistical attitude it is to say you're great. He was basically saying, don't say either. Just do your job and always try to get better. I went, wow. And so when I got to the level where, you know, repetition, and I'm doing like the highest level things like the Obama inauguration that we were playing with 25 artists, or those Kennedy Center honors where you have to read, you don't want to mess up with Chris Cornell, Sting, Lady Gaga, Bruno Mars, Bruce Springsteen, you know, I mean, the pressure, 16 camera shooting, it's live and the president's there and all these political and Hollywood royalties are there, and you can't mess up. The drummer can't, and you just finished rehearsing 2 hours ago, and now we're doing the show. You know, I just learned that, you know, I was at that level now where I don't get nervous. I just get very focused. It's like before the Super Bowl, I know what to do. I know that things can go wrong that I didn't do, but I have to problem solve and figure it out. And when something goes wrong or the way you don't want it to go, you got to solve the problem. If it's you or somebody else or the artist, you don't know what somebody's going to do. You got to be ready you got to be in a Navy SEAL kind of a Delta Force mode where what is my trajectory to get through this show and do an amazing job? If something goes wrong, you fix it, you immediately calculate what is the problem, how to solve it within seconds and move forward. And if you did something you didn't want, forget about it, dude. I know that if you spend 50% of your brain worrying about what you just did, now you're only operating on 50%. That's all you got left to do a great job. I need 100% there. So I understood this mentality, this whole approach to being a great warrior, a Jedi, is that you think about the Jedis in those movies. Shit's flying by them. It's just calm as a cucumber because they understand they got to be in that state to be a Jedi. That's what I'm aware of now.
So you talked about the pressure of the shows. Do you have a pre-show routine? You're going to do a big show. Is there something you do before you go out to play every night?
Those big shows, well, absolutely. Like I was on tour with Joe Satriani and Steve Vai. I have a 2.5-hour workout I do in my hotel room because we don't do sound checks. And I have to come out strong out of the box. And as you know, and Joe's stuff and Steve's stuff's technical. I also do 15 minutes before, and when I get to the venue, I start practicing like a madman. Feet and hands are flying. I know exactly every note I'm practicing. All right? It's all designed for the show. I always practice the first 3 songs of the show and the last song of the show to make sure I'm on point. I remember a guy saying from the Steve Vai band, man, why do you practice that stuff? You know it. I said, I know it because I practice it every day. There's some things that I just don't do every day, like sax boogie. It's a shuffle with 16th note shuffle, leading with my left foot. I don't do that every day. I mean, I have to do it every day so I can play it in the show, like I own it.
Right.
And you know, the reason why I sound the way I do is because I practice this stuff every day. Now, and then 15 minutes before I go on stage, I do 100 jumping jacks. On the side of the stage, right before I'm going to walk on, another 50. So when I walk on, I'm like, blah, I'm already up. I'm already pumped. I'm coming out fighting. So, but before those big TV shows, usually we're done rehearsing. 90 minutes before the show.
Wow.
And a lot of times I've just rehearsed with 6 or 8 artists for the first time right before the show. So what I do is I get, let's say there's like 28 songs. First of all, my goal, I take the charts and take pictures of them in an iPad in order so that I can use a foot switch to advance it so I don't have paper, I'm not moving. When I rehearse, I make sure that the drum machine is programmed. I get the latest set order because they'll change it. I'm frantically, they're all eating dinner. I'm like on the stage. Programming, I have every tempo on every chart. I also have who to count off to. I also have maybe who's got to tune their guitars. I have who's reading a teleprompter. I have all that written out. I make sure that the charts are in order, that the tempos on the drum machine are in order. I put them in there, and then I rehearse the count off. I literally rehearse the count off, start playing. This is not on the drums because they need usually quiet. I'm rehearsing the beginning. I go right to the end. Then I rehearse moving the page from one thing to the next and counting off the next song. We have never done the show in sequence. I'm rehearsing that sequence from being able to go from 168 to 98, from shuffle to, not shuffle. I mean, it's insane the amount of preparation, just the sequence of the show. Now we do the show, like I said, 14 cameras, 16 cameras, recording. And at the end of the show, I go right to the engineer and say, how are we? Basically, am I good? Because you can fix guitars, but drums, and he'll say, you're the least of my problems. As a matter of fact, you did great. So that's what I want to hear. So that's my preparation. It's like, and it's total Jedi, and I don't get nervous. I just get very, very focused.
But over the years, have you ever once, and it's okay if you haven't, I wouldn't doubt it if you haven't, but have you ever once mischarted anything or forgotten something in a chart where you learned it on the fly, like, I forgot to put that in, or where it came to you, you realized you forgot?
Of course. Or I'm so prepared. I'm looking at the set list. It says the next song is this song at this tempo. I set the drum machine while I'm playing, and then I keep thinking about that song to the point where then I thought I played it. I go to the next song, and then everyone looks at me like, "What are you doing?" Like, oh. So yeah, I've done that. I advance. I go ahead, or things happen. Just stupid stuff happens. But that's the challenge right there, is to then go, forget about it, forget about it, forget about it. Move on, move forward. Get back to 100% in the game.
Do you miss Indiana or the East Coast for that matter?
Oh, of course I do. I was just talking to somebody from Indiana, and I was like, man, the kids, I knew exactly what street they are. I know exactly what a house they're in. And it's, the school year's starting, the early fall. And they're right next to this bar, Nick's, where I used to go when I was living in a band house before Mellencamp, paying $62 a month for rent. I would count my quarters to play Space Invaders and maybe have 4 beers, the cheap beer. So yeah, I do miss those places. And of course, the East Coast, I do. It's like, and I keep thinking I'm going to get on a plane, but I'm always so busy.
Yeah. Well, and so that brings me, you're the king of inadvertent segues, but that brings me to my next question. So you write a book a while back, Sex, Drums, and Rock and Roll, which, again, given your career, and I can only imagine how much didn't go in the book, right? Let alone what did make it in. But then around the same time, you were also starting to do a lot of motivational speaking, working with companies. I mean, talk to me about, that is such a perfect thing for you, but generally speaking, not something someone in your situation would ever think, like, I'm going to go down this road and try this, because it's a very different world than the rock and roll world in some ways. And I'm sure in some it's very similar, but I mean, talk us through this process of you wanting to share your experiences and everything you've learned with people that may not necessarily be in the music industry, right? These companies, these corporations. What's that like for you?
Well, it's definitely a different world. The thing that's similar is that I am this this entity, I guess you want to call it rock star drummer, and I like to think I'm in that place where like a Tom Brady or somebody who's really figured out how to dot the I's, cross the T's, how to be a bad mofo still, because I want to be, because I love what I do, like a Sammy Hagar. I just went and saw them. Oh my God, and I'm playing with him coming up. Or Billy Gibbons, so I'll be playing with him. Or Joe Satriani and Steve Vai. I mean, these guys were all the same sort of thing. Everybody really just every day, it's like full commitment and really love what they do. What happened was I wrote that book. You're spot on. I wrote that book, and that was a 4 year undertaking. I've written another book and rewritten it twice, and I just put it on the shelf right now. That's more of a self-help book, and it parallels with my speaking. The things I talk about in my speech, which is about realize your purpose, the 3 C's: connecting, communicating, collaborating, which is probably a big reason why I get hired. I know how to connect and communicate and collaborate. Innovation, creativity, solving problems requires innovation, creativity, and then adapt or die to stay relevant in any business. And these things are all under the umbrella of purpose and realize who are you, why are you here, get the most value out of life. That is my story. I mean, and that's what my autobiography is about. Is like, how did a kid from a little town of 3,000 people get to where I am? And it wasn't the most talented, wasn't the fastest drummer. Why? And when I speak to corporations, it doesn't matter if you're a drummer or an athlete or a business person. It's all the same thing. And so I wrote the book, and then people wanted me to, talk about the book, and I'd already done 30 years of drum clinics. So I was used to being in front of people, and it's natural for me to talk to people. I know how to connect with people. I know how to listen. When I do sessions, I got to walk right up to Mick Jagger, right up to Elton John, right up to Sting, right up to McCartney, right up to Alice Cooper, right up to any of these famous people, and connect with them right away on a personal level so that we can play music together. And so, um, I just, that is not a difficult thing for me to do. So I accidentally, well, I was invited to see this guy lecture, this scientist, at a men's group event. And the agent for this speaker looked at me in LA and says, Kenny Aronoff, what are you doing here? I'm like, I don't know. I got invited. Who are you? He's an agent for big speakers, and he got Shark Tank people. He's got Shaq if he wants to do people like that. He's got the best in the aerospace. He's got the best in every field. Mullins, the skateboarder, and he explained to me what he does. I went, wow. I'd love to have lunch with you. So we talked, and I asked him, what? All right, so I think this suddenly feels right to me. I said, and he explained to me, okay, a lot of people think they can speak. A lot of people think they have a story. Why do you think what do you got to offer anybody? What do you got to offer? So we went through a process, had a couple of meetings. He says, all right, this is what you need to do. Well, I did that. It took me 2.5, 3 years. Spent a lot of money. I built I built a website. I thought it was horrible. So I scratched it after spending $10,000 on that one. Started again. Spent a lot more until I got it right. And I came back to him, and I got some low speaking events and people trying to help me, and I filmed it, bought film crew. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, and anyway, I did all this stuff. I went back to him. I said, hey, Chris, I'd like to have a lunch with you. I did what you told me to do. He says, what? I said, yeah, I did what you told me to do. And he was starting to, and when I showed him what I did, he went, I want to work with you. And this has always been Kenny Aronoff. Once I set my sights on something, I'm relentless. I'm not the smartest, the fastest, but I am a hard mofo worker. I'm total. I get in, I'll spend time, but when I get done, I know what I'm doing. And he saw that. And then we started building my program and building it and building it. And I wrote the whole script. And then he made me during the pandemic when I'd already been doing speaking, but during the pandemic, I invested about $20,000 in lights and stuff and created my whole speaking thing for my studio with playing and different cameras and switchers. And then we wanted to bring my speech to another level. He had me give that whole speech in front of him on Zoom, performing, speaking. And he took notes. When we got done, he went, okay, this is what you need to change. You need to just get rid of that shit, do this. And then we created the opening reel. He was actively involved. That if you go on my website, on the speaking page, there's a 1:40 reel. Shows like I played with everybody, and names are flying that just you can't believe one person played with all these people. And I left a lot of names out. We put this together as my opening reel. And so the whole thing progressed. And now I have a business, but it's been 8 years, 9 years of slowly, just like drumming. It didn't happen overnight. It took a long time. You keep practicing, keep learning. So now I have a whole mechanism. He has an assistant, I have an assistant, and it's a whole thing involved. I have a drum set on stage. I have a deck with a movie and pictures. And the cool thing about my story is it's all rock and roll examples of when I talk about connecting and communicating with people, as everybody needs to do in any business. I've got Elton John, Rod Stewart, Bon Jovi, Springsteen, Sting, Eddie Vedder from Pearl Jam. I got, Kid Rock. I've got Willie Nelson, Chris Christopherson, Melissa Etheridge, Sting. I mean, these are the people I'm connecting with, and they're like, so it makes the story exciting because in their world, they're not connecting with those people. And when I talk about, getting just driven by my purpose in life and my passion, the decisions I made, like I worked my ass off through college and, 365 days practicing and getting crushed by teachers. And eventually I get into the Jerusalem Symphony Orchestra and turn it down. Why would I turn it down? What? Because I was following my purpose. I wanted to play in a rock band. I turned down a paycheck certainty, a paycheck for nothing. Nothing. That's when you know you're doing the right thing. I turned down something for something else that I'm feeling, and there's no paycheck there. There's no job there. But I did it. That eventually led me 4 years later to the Mellencamp band. And after 5 weeks in the studio, I get fired. And I tell John, he tells me to go home. I said, no. That's like me telling you, you're fired. You go, no, I'm not. I'm like, yeah, you're fired. You go, no, I'm not. I says, what don't you understand about the words I just said? You're fired. He said, I'm not going home. And I stayed there because I wouldn't go home because I felt like a loser, number one. And second of all, I want to learn. I want to get better. So I said, you don't have to pay me. I'll sleep on the couch. And he went, all right. And I did learn. And that eventually led me to Jack and Diane 2 years later. All of these stories, everybody's been crushed and beat down. And my point is, it doesn't matter if you're on a basketball court or in a corporate boardroom meeting or in a rock and roll band. If you do what you love doing, you will persevere through all the setbacks and obstacles that you will run into in life. Like the running back who breaks his leg in preseason. He comes back because he friggin' loves football. That's my message. You got, Mark Twain said, 2 most important days in a person's life, the day they were born and the day they figure out what the friggin' are you doing here? Figure it out. Oh, and my whole story ties into that all the way. And I have a playing component. I play with music as an entertainment part.
Sure.
And then at the end, I connect with people. I try to connect the night before, and I connect the day after, and make this connection so they will never forget this experience.
Did you see all this years ago in your mind as you looked forward, or did you just think you were going to play with Mellencamp until that was it? You were going to be that was it. I was just going to be this drummer in Mellencamp's band, and that's it. And when it's over, and I'll do something else. Was that more along the lines of what you thought? Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, I turned down an Elton John tour. I turned down going out with Skinner. I turned down Mick Jagger tour. I turned down the Highwaymen tour. That's Johnny Cash,
Wow.
Willie Nelson, Chris Christopherson, Waylon Jennings. The manager went, "Let me get this right. You're turning down Johnny Cash,
Yeah.
Willie
Ouch.
Nelson, Chris Christopherson, and Waylon Jennings to be with military camp?"
Yeah.
I went, "Yep." Because and when I was at the Forum, and I was about to go on stage with Mellencamp, 360 degrees, 20,000 people all screaming for us, Bernie Taupin comes up to me and says, "I cannot believe you turned down Elton John." I went, "Me either." I said, "But come here. Look at this. They're all going crazy, dancing, because our shows were intense." I says, "I'm Keith Richards in this band. I mean, when I get up there, I've recorded every song. People look at him, and then I'm the next source of energy and excitement. I'm not just some guy in the back.
No.
And my drum sound is big, and I mean, it's a hard thing to walk away from." I said, "By the way, why are you here tonight?" "To see Mellencamp." So I said, so it was hard. And even John, when I told him that, I was in the car and I saw in the rearview mirror, he was going like, what an idiot. He turned out Elton John for me. So yeah, I mean, I thought I was going to be Mellencamp until he quit in 1988 for a while. And for 3 years, I went, I'm never going to work for one guy ever again.
Smart.
That's when my trajectory changed. So it was a gift. It was a gift that he did that.
Do you realize, this has to have been brought up at some point in time in your career, that as a drummer coming up in an incredibly popular band in the 80s, which was an amazing visual time in music, you can single-handedly be traced back to, and I mean this as a fellow man with no hair, to being one of the first dudes to be bald on TV and making it cool and badass. And I have to ask, because at some point in time, with the way that things were in the 80s, being everything's visual, videos,
Oh, yeah.
did anyone ever try and pressure you to go down the dreaded toupee or hair thing? Or were you just like, that? This is just what happens. I went bald. This is what happens to me. I'm going forward with it.
Well, first of all, I didn't know what cool was. And John Mellencamp was always teasing me because I had the cul-de-sac, and then I had a ponytail. And John is really, really intuitively smart in many ways. His delivery sometimes isn't the greatest, but I learned so much from him. He said, "Dude, you wearing a ponytail. You realize the guy at the post office wears a ponytail? You're a rock star. What are you doing looking like him?" I went, "Oh my God, he's right." And, I didn't know how to dress. I mean, I didn't know how to look cool. And it took a long time to figure that out. And most of all, to be authentic. It wasn't until, and then I used to shave my head, not with the blade, but the clippers.
Yeah,
And
close.
and it wasn't until I was with the Smashing Pumpkins that I finally waited till I was in Europe and shaved my head all the way. Because I thought I had a big bump behind my head. But I shaved my head. I was thinking, well, if it's not happening, I'll be in Europe for a month. And the first concert I did with the Pumpkins, as I was walking on stage at what's that venue downtown? Begins with a C in Chicago. I think it begins with a C.
You mean the Metro? Were you at the Metro?
No, Metro.
No.
That's it.
Yeah,
M.
Metro.
And M. It starts with M. Yeah, we played the Metro, and I went on stage. It was the beginning of the Adore tour, and I was wearing a black shirt with yellow stripes down the side, tight because I was muscular. And my kid said, "Hey, you should wear these glasses." I walked on stage. They were yellow goggles with black rims. The next day, the Chicago Tribune talked more about my glasses than my playing. I went, "Well, I'm wearing glasses now."
That's a thing.
And I was starting to understand brand. And then when I went to Europe and shaved my head, that was it. Bam.
Sure.
All of a sudden, everybody was looking at me like, "Who's that guy? Wow, that guy." And it seemed natural, so that became my thing. And every so often people, on my podcast, I'll get, "Man, what's the glasses thing for?" I never reply. I want to say, though, dude, I've been wearing glasses to bed since I was 1998. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I wear. And it's just my brand, and I finally found it. And the bald, I look back and like, what was I thinking? I should have shaved my head, 40 years ago. I didn't know it was cool. I didn't.
Well, you're part of the reason. I mean, I think you don't get enough credit for being that guy. I mean, and that look, I can only imagine, given the scope of experiences you've had, right? The last thing you're thinking about, quite honestly, as you're traveling the world, going to all these shows, doing like you're in the throes of this career that's amazing. I'm sure the last thing on your mind is, should I shave my head or not? It's like, so when it happens, it's that moment. But I think you pointed it out. I mean, all of these things aren't accidental with you. And I think that was more what I wanted to get with. You really do understand the brand of Kenny Aronoff, which I think is rare.
I do now.
I think you could very have easily just rested. And I mean, like, I'm a religious zealot when it comes to Jeff Porcaro. But Jeff Porcaro wasn't a brand. Jeff Porcaro was just an amazing session drummer. And you could have just been that guy that's just an amazing session drummer.
Yeah.
How much credit do you give the branding part of your ethos to kind of advancing your career through the past 15 years?
Well, I think that understanding brand, especially in these times with regard to social media and marketing, where, people are seeing, you got to compete with everybody in the world now, and understanding what brand is. I started it younger. Started at probably 1988 without understanding what brand is because it was more survival. When John quit, I said, well, I got to make a living. So I started to become a session drummer, and then that took off. I went, wow, I'm in the Mellencamp band, but I'm starting the Kenny Aronoff brand. But then then the book, and then, and then now I have the Uncommon Wine, Uncommon Studios. When I started discussing, like you said, when the internet started and I understood how powerful the word brand started coming my way, I started understanding what that was. Then I put that into play and I understood. So certain things when even to the extent of how I will never leave my house unless I only leave my house with the idea that TMZ could be outside there with a camera because that happened to me. That happened to me. I done the Kennedy Center Honors. Then I was a featured guy with Trace Atkins on the Country Music Awards in Vegas, where my name's on the marquee. And I definitely partied down that night after both those events. And I was a little bit hungover, and I smartly wore glasses, looked great, leather jacket, black pants. I get to baggage claim, and a guy comes up, hey, man, are you a drummer? And I went, oh, he probably wants an autograph. All of a sudden, I said, yeah. Are you Kenny Aronoff? Yeah. Bam! TMZ camera came up. And I went, that is an example of why I always make sure I look good when I leave out of the hotel or out of
you're always on. You're always Kenny Aronoff.
You never know.
Always Kenny Aronoff.
Yeah. You never know who's going to see you. And that's brand mentality. And sure enough, by the way, I thought there's no way I'm going to be on TMZ. Next day, somebody from New York called me up and said, guess what, dude, you're on TMZ. Not only on TMZ, but 2 spots. And oh my God. And it's a whole thing about being healthy and fit.
Well, yeah.
And are there any drummers that are big? And I mentioned a few, and oh my God, they put them on. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be murdered here. And then they stretched out. This guy works with all the big guys. They had Meatloaf on. They stretched the film out so he looks humongous. They had all these people, and it made them look bigger than they really are. And then they talked. They came back after commercial. And isn't there a drummer who plays with one arm?
Oh my Lord!
I know, but they didn't trash me. But my point is, I understand brand, and I'll make decisions. Even what podcasts I'm on, like, it's got to be in brand. It's got to make sense. Does this making sense with my brand? With no ego, but just the right moves. I remember during the pandemic, I was doing so many podcasts. My agent said, you got to back off, man. You're too visible now. You got to save it. Oh, my computer's about to go down. I forgot to plug it in. Hold on.
I'm holding. No worries.
Showing it low.
It's live.
We're good.
Boom.
We're good. Brand is very, very important. in every aspect. Even I've gotten real good at, the lighting, the way my podcast looks, my bottle for my uncommon wine. Everything is like, I'm very aware of how I present, every picture I take. Every picture I take, I make sure, or people want a video and I'm recording every so often, people leave in my studio. I'm like, you can video, but not until I tell you when and where.
Sure. So as we start to wind this down, I know you have a million things to do. I've been meaning to ask because, again, you're an anomaly as far as someone who's in a position to comment on something like this, and it's with all of the greatest sincerity. And I actually am curious. I mean, given the amount of talent and people in your life that you've worked with, obviously as time progresses, we lose some of those people. And is it weird for you as we all get older and time keeps marching on, when someone you've worked with or developed a really close relationship passes on, and it's sort of like we're in this weird cultural phenomenon right now where popular culture is very different than it was maybe when some of these people were at the height of their fame, and it almost seems like they don't even get the fanfare they deserve for passing on. What is and not it's a dumb question to ask what it's like. It's got to be miserably hard, but how do you deal with that sort of always in the periphery? Because again, this is just a byproduct of we're all getting older. We are all on our way out. It doesn't matter. But I mean, even recently we've seen Meatloaf pass. We've talked about him. Charlie Watts has passed. We've seen all of these amazing icons pass. And you, again, are in this unique position where, for most part, whenever someone famous passes, I can pretty much go get to you in like 1 or 2 degrees. It's like the 6 degrees from Kevin Bacon. It's like you're right there. You and Fred Corey are the only two drummers that I can get to everybody everywhere with somehow. What is that? How do you kind of keep all that in check as you keep moving forward?
Oh man, I'm a total warrior. I'm like the Navy SEAL guy. You just keep marching. You keep your sights on the trajectory. That stuff's gonna happen. I'm just wired that way. It's sad. It's like, but I accept it. I accept death. It's just gonna happen. And I just move. I just keep moving on. There's a place in my heart. It's sad, but I just keep moving forward. It's not cold. It's just, I just like, dude, this is going to happen to all of us. It's going to happen to my twin brother, my sister. We talk about it. Dude, one of us is going to get a call one day. Yep, the other guy just had a stroke, or this guy died, or he got cancer. Dude, it is what it is, man.
So one of the greatest kept secrets in the industry, that's not really a secret, but it is the twin brother thing. And I'm going to tell you right now, I am still never going to forget the moment you looked me in my stupid face and said, well, I have a twin brother. And then you pulled up a picture, and I didn't even know what to do with the information. I still don't know how to process. And not like kind of like we're fraternal twins. Like if he got off a plane in sunglasses, they're mobbing him, they're saying Ken, and I'm sure it's happened a million times.
Oh yeah.
How is this not a thing that is talked about or abused by you and him more frequently? How is this?
We could have done so much with it. Talk about brand.
Oh my, look, you could be in 2 places at once. Easy. Well, you double the money for both of you. Well, he's a doctor, so that's maybe you don't want to double for him. That might be
or they don't want him to double for me.
But that would be funny. His would be funny. Yours would be disastrous. Yeah.
Yeah, might be life-changing.
Yeah, literally. But how is this not talked about every single day online somewhere?
I should have it everywhere. I should have it behind me on a screen. It's like I should have it on my podcast. I should have it everywhere. It was so identical. It's ridiculous.
For all I know, I'm talking to him right now. I don't even know that it's you right now. That's the thing. And everyone will go to Google and look. There's maybe 1 or 2 pictures on Google, but given Kenny's career and all he's accomplished, there's nearly not enough coverage of this. Not even, it's like eerily scary. Again, same look, same everything. But is he as nice as you? Is he as driven and as nice guy as you?
And he's driven as much. Poor guy. I mean, he goes to an airport, gets on a plane. It's like, they go, and he say, what kind of drums you play? He says, how'd you know I was a drummer? Well,
Yeah.
the guy's mouth is open. He's pointing. He says, "You must be a drummer because I don't know you."
Oh,
It's
it's
funny.
amazing.
It's a riot, man.
I love it
Yeah.
to this day. Okay.
Yeah.
So you've done everything. As far as I'm concerned, I mean, you don't own a sports team yet. That's a yet though. There's a hard that you yet. But okay, rock star, brand expert, public speaker, author. You're not a movie star yet either. Is that on the, is there going to be a Kenny Aronoff biopic where that you starring your brother as you,
Well,
easy casting?
somebody convinced me to start a documentary, but there was no funding, so it was about, it's just going to be my story. Somebody offered me a role in a movie that's being filmed next year, so a small role,
But it's
and
official. That's it. Now you're a
I
movie
don't.
star too.
Well, we don't know yet when
We
it comes
do.
out, when it's on the screen, But the guy said, "I want you to be exactly you. If you want to rewrite any lines, go ahead. I'll send you the script. We'll see. We'll see if it ends up happening." A lot of people say a lot of things, but I think if I'm playing myself or anything close to it, it'll just roll off my tongue.
All right. So I don't want to take any thunder away from people actually reading your book or for anyone that might have the opportunity to experience one of your live speaking sessions to do that, because I think those are important. And you guys should go to Kenny's website and check all that out. There'll be links down below. But it's rare, again, that I get, for lack of a better term, and again, with the utmost respect, an elder statesman of rock on the show who has literally, and not figuratively, but literally seen it all into 1,300 discs. You have 1,300 trophies that would say otherwise. There is no one silver bullet for anything. We all know that's hard work, as you've attested to. That's the number one common denominator. But if you're a young kid coming up, a fan of yours, wants to walk in your footsteps, obviously the industry is different. Obviously things have changed. We could do 7 podcasts on that, but there's no point, because as long as there's people, human connection in music is going to be necessary. What's the advice you give the next generation, or whether it's the next, whoever's listening to this, whenever this podcast reaches the right ears and that person has decided, hey, what Kenny said, I identify with, I have to do this. I have to give everything I am to this crazy passion for music. What do you tell that younger version of someone driven like yourself right now?
Well, the most important thing is if they've got that passion, you have to do whatever it takes to keep that alive. That's the most important thing in life, besides eating to survive. But because once you have that passion, don't mess with that. That's the truth. That is the truth. That's who you are. That's your essence. That's your being. And in that being is your purpose in life, your deepest desires. And like I said, if you act on that, you'll be unstoppable, you'll be undeniable, you'll be authentic, and the ripple effect of your love and joy and happiness doing your thing is going to affect everybody around you. People are going to want you on their team. They're going to want you there. Now, nobody's born successful, and success doesn't land in your lap. It's like a math equation. You do nothing, you get nothing. If you do nothing, you get nothing, as it should be. So the passion for what you want to do, you want to play drums, is the fuel that will help you persevere and get through all the setbacks and obstacles you will run into in life. And so with that passion, you got to do this. You have to work hard, be self-disciplined, and persevere. But that's the fuel that helps you do that. And you keep going like that running back. I got to get the ball again. I got to keep going. I got to go. Because that's all fueled by your desire. So the music industry is a whole different thing than it used to be. But if you want to play drums and you want to be in music and you have to take 5 jobs to afford to do to make it possible for you to do what you love doing, then you do it. You can't sit there and go, there are no excuses. Walk around the excuses. The time you spend thinking about the excuse, you're not moving forward. Just keep moving forward. Just keep going for it. If you don't want to keep moving forward, then maybe it's not your passion.
There's no better way to end than that. So I have to tell you, because you had mentioned it earlier, obviously we know your time is incredibly valuable and you're very particular about who you talk to. So we are beyond humbled and flattered that you took time to talk with me of all people today. We love you. We're big fans, and we're here to support you and all that you do for as long as you decide to do it. So I think from myself, everyone at Tune Track, but just the drumming and music community in general, and I mean it. It's just the simplest thing I can say is just thank you. Just thank you for everything.
Awesome. Thank you.
We're fans.
That's nice.
I'm going to turn this way, not because I'm rude, but I have to tell these people some things, and then we'll come back. Hey, you heard it here, second, third, or fourth, maybe fifth. I don't know, but you heard it here. We got to spend some time with the living legend. Make sure you check out Kenny's website. And if you're not familiar with Kenny Aronoff, the only question I have for you is, why did your parents or guardians fail you so miserably? I just don't know. No, but as always, thank you for taking time to spend with us here on the Sound Horizons podcast, brought to you by Tune Track. My name is Rick. I will be here next time, which I think is a week from now, doing the exact same thing of talking to the coolest people in the coolest business there is, and that's the business of music. Until then, stay safe, be good to one another. We love you, and have a fantastic rest of whatever you're doing. Most of you go back to work. You've been in the bathroom a long time now. Have a great day.